All right, guys. Actual Justice Warrior made a video criticizing our king, Ethan Klein. Now, I actually used to watch Actual Justice Warrior a little bit offline. What? You know, he was interesting. I haven't checked in with him in a while. He seems to be growing. He seems pretty like a cool dude. So I'm curious, you know, we got a little bit, you know, what's could be better, listening to Actual Justice Warrior and Ethan Klein slander? What? No, but it says H3H3 Sims for criminals. So let's get this party started. Oh, wait, hold on.
Tregan Films super chatted $1.99. 69 viewers. Epic.
Not bad.
How's
brother.
it going, Mr. Gut?
Not too bad, brother. How are you? But yeah, let's get this party started.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Sean, and today I got a fascinating story, a fascinating perspective on the psychology that is Ethan Klein, because I was going to do a story about this mass robbery that took place in a California Nordstrom. I was going to talk about how they stole the entire display from this Nordstrom and how ridiculous the video was. But then I just felt like I was losing touch, and I didn't really want to make this video because I've made it so many times. It's not all that interesting. But then, out of nowhere, H3H3
we got a little seasoning. We got the Ethan Klein seasoning to the otherwise bland stew. That is Rob stealing things. Okay.
It's on the podcast. Ethan himself decided to make the case, quite literally, that all criminals are in fact Aladdin. And I am not joking about
is that racist? Is he saying that they're all like Indian people or something? What is Aladdin? Where's Aladdin from? Where does that take place in? Is that India? Is that racist? Am I racist? Where does it take place? Arabian, I think that's, I don't know. Arabia. Is that different? I don't know. Let's continue. We're getting
he actually
long.
said it. His whole entire take on this topic is idiotic, so that's what we're going to talk about today. The Nordstrom looting, but also Ethan Klein actually believing the joke reference that I made on this channel, or make on this channel, for the past few years, that all criminals are Aladdin. But before we get into that, I just want to say thank you to everybody. Signed up, actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
Nice. And to my podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform.
A major robbery, 30 people in the Valley, the Topanga Mall over the weekend.
Right. What? Topanga from Boy Meets World? Can't do that. It's my favorite character from that show.
Topanga Mall.
Yeah, dude, it was nuts, man.
Wait, why didn't I hear about that? What happened? 30 people?
30 people.
30 people all committed a robbery together. Yeah. What did they rob?
Nordstrom.
Nordstrom. Is there a video of it?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Isn't Nordstrom a clothing store? I mean, if you're gonna steal something justifiably, I would say food. You know what I mean? Because I get it. I mean, I don't get it. I get too much of it. But I think that you're understanding what you're picking up what I'm putting down. You know.
Okay, Topanga Mall. That's the mall I always go to with my kids, with my family.
Oh, jeez.
So the setup for this.
Oh
is that
shit! Ethan did it. Ethan was the one who did it. Oh.
Ethan's group has brought it to his attention that there was a robbery, a flash mob robbery of around 30 people at a Nordstrom in Topanga Mall. Now this should hit a little close to home for one Ethan Klein, since apparently this is the mall that he likes to take his family to. However, that is not going to make his takes any less stupid, and in fact, actually maybe is making them even more stupid.
I'm there all the time.
VIP high roller at that.
But they weren't like packing heat or anything. They just mopped it, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay,
I guess
that's less scary.
It also happened at a.
It is a little less scary if they don't have a gun. I'm a little less scared.
Century City the other week.
Yeah.
They robbed the Gucci store there.
And at Glendale Galleria. A bunch of people robbed. I think it was like
Damn.
So right here, Ethan is trying to make a moral delineation from people who commit just the smash and grab theft under the threat of violence. That's what people feel when 30 people storm into a store in order to take merchandise, versus when people come in armed with a weapon and his crew member that is off camera.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a difference between somebody who's brandishing a weapon versus not. But like, it's still wrong and a bad thing. I mean, hot take, right? Hottest take of the century. It's still not a good thing. Sure.
At this point in time, it says, well, no, they weren't armed. It was just like a smash and grab. There's no threat of violence. Nobody got hurt. More on that a little bit later after they double down about 14 times on that position.
Here it is. Topanga Mall, Nordstrom's robbery. 60 to 100,000 stolen.
Wow.
I mean,
I used to work next to this Nordstrom.
Anti-capitalist day ongoing.
So you can already hear from Ethan's tone about the 60 to 100K
baby.
being stolen from this, and from Dan, the ball guy behind the camera, that they're not taking this problem seriously. They think,
yeah, I mean, it's wrong. I think it's wrong, obviously. Oh, shit on my balls. What I would say is that I just don't care about corporations, so I don't care that much. Like that, you know what I mean? Like, I know that's mean, and I know it's like a wrong thing to think on a human level. If I was in criminal justice, or I was like the lawyer, or the police or something, I would have a different stance on it because it's my job to enforce the law. But realistically speaking, like, I just don't care about rich people anymore. And part of it is because, like, listen, as people, we're like, people in general, like, when you have a structure where, in my opinion, rich people and corporations aren't paying their fair share in taxes, while the rest of us gets fucked all over the place. I don't care about, like, non-small businesses. They just don't mean anything to me. And so, like, that's where I'm at. Like, this is wrong. They should be arrested. I just personally don't give a shit. So
I think it's no big deal. They're okay with the theft. And if you think I'm doing a bit of mind reading, remember, I've watched this entire clip, and they're going to explicitly say all of the things, just in slightly different words, that I just said to you right there.
We were supposed to go over the weekend, but I'm like, thank God I did it.
Yeah. I don't think they mugged anyone.
Yeah, nothing would happen.
No, but still, you know.
I mean, it's Nordstrom's. They'll recover. Gucci, they'll recover.
that's true. That's true.
Is just mob-style smash and grab robbery.
So they go on to talk about how this is a popular mall in the area. They've all been there. One of Ethan's crew members actually was going to go there this weekend, and he's happy that he didn't because of all the chaos. And Ethan, of course, says, well, it's Nordstrom, it's Gucci, referencing another store that had a flash mob robbery a week earlier. They'll recover. And this is their way of saying, oh, these are luxury stores. They'll be totally fine, excusing the theft, pretending like it's not a...
Well, they're right. It is a luxury store. They will be fine. But then at the same time, like, you should say, like, yeah, this is wrong. It's good to be like, no, stealing is wrong. But, like, okay, whatever. So far, I don't
not
really care.
factoring in that when these stores eventually close, and you can look at the state of malls in the United States of America, and this only helps to further that state, that the employees at these stores will be out of luck.
True, but, like, let's talk about, like, the real issue when it comes to state of malls in America. Very little to do with theft. Everything to do with companies like Amazon pricing people out of the ability to, like, make a living and stuff, right? I mean, that's what's happening. We are in the internet age. COVID exacerbated that problem. You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, of course that's not a good thing. They should, when you steal, it hurts the business front. But this problem, like, of malls closing is primarily a technology issue that we haven't addressed correctly. That's a you know what I mean? So it is a problem, but it's a majority a different problem. And it needs to be addressed. The primary issue again, and a lot of it is that people aren't going out as much. It's cheaper to not go, to, like, go on Amazon a lot of times. And people don't have enough money for the experience. Like, there's less and less money in the middle class. They don't have as much money to go out. Like, you know, when I go to the mall with my wife, I don't go to the mall for a store. We go to the mall and then we go to a store. It's a destination. It's not really, like, you don't, like, that's, at least that's how I interact with the mall. Maybe I'm unique, but I think most people interact with the mall as a destination, a place to go, not necessarily to buy stuff. You might go, I want to go to the mall. I'll go to Old Navy and buy something. But for the most part, it's just a destination. You know, and it's just going away, and we need to figure out ways to incentivize that.
If you have money invested in Nordstrom, and I'm not talking about your big ticket investors, I'm talking about small investors who have pensions or whatever, when their stock prices go down, that affects you. When prices go up, that also affects the consumer. When problems happen with these stores closing and there's reduced foot traffic, if you happen to own a booth or the various small businesses or other businesses in the mall because people don't want to go where places are unsafe, that is going to also affect you. They pay no mind to the fact that this kind of theft has a ripple effect on the communities where it occurs, and there's a reason why that these kind of stores, these kind of malls, these kind of large-scale operations don't open up in bad neighborhoods, and it's because bad neighborhoods typically have higher rates of theft.
That's true. He's making a good point there. That's a really, I mean, he's right. You know what I mean? It does hurt consumer, or not consumer confidence. It hurts the company's confidence in the area, and they may not open up in poor areas, and if they don't open up in those poor areas, that's less jobs available for those poor people and less goods to consume for those poor people. Less competition. Like, he's right about that. I mean, there's no denying it. It's not a good thing, you know. So
people in those neighborhoods have to go further in order to commute to work. They don't have access to grocery stores as much as somewhere where there isn't much theft, and it creates a bunch of additional problems.
True. Well, here it is, guys. Feast your eyes. This is what California hellscape looks like, Texas.
Let's go.
I'm leaving. Jesus, man. Oh, yeah, how do you get this many people together who are down for this? Is there a Facebook group or something? Nordstrom Smash and Grab on August 13th?
There was Storm Area 51, Storm Nordstrom.
Listen, times are hard, man. I mean, that's all this tells me.
So again, you have Ethan down.
I mean, I don't know if that's what that tells me. If they were stealing from a grocery store, maybe. Listen, here's what I would say. Is this, okay? People are only going to put up with a certain amount of oppression before they fight back, okay? Now, I'm not going to sit there and say that every one of those persons those people or persons are oppressed in this way where they can't succeed in life, right? I will say, because a lot of them, I mean, let me look again. A lot of them look black, right? And when I see that, I think, first of all, there's nothing different between black and white people, except I just can't go outside in the sun for too long, okay? No, but there's no difference between black and white people, other than the fact that white people or black people have been oppressed in this country historically. I'm gonna fucking die. I'm gonna cry. And that mixed in with absolutely having resources denied, a hatred of police, because police, whether police are now being racist or not, is almost irrelevant. It's historically police have been like racist, treating black people as less equal. Same thing with the criminal justice system historically, to a degree where even if things aren't racist anymore, that historical like frustration has been passed down. There's no trust for the police. There's no caring about police. There's no caring about a society that doesn't care about black people. And so, like, people are just like, fuck it. We don't care. That's a combination of different shit. If you disagree, I would have to assume that you just you think that white people or black people are fundamentally different. But if white people were going through the same things, they would be doing the same shit. That's it. It's not good. They need to be arrested, of course. But I look at this as like, okay, what can we do to stop people from wanting to do this? And I would say people need, I mean, there needs to be some kind of like systemic change more than anything else. So I don't think that's a hot take.
Listen, times are hard, man. I mean, that's all this tells me.
So again, you have Ethan downplaying this. You have Ethan talking about how times are hard. That's what this tells him, which again is obviously one of the more idiotic things that you could put forward. Times are hard if you're some of the people that are working at these retail stores. If you're some of the people who are being assaulted by these criminals. By the way, that happened in this case. True. We'll get to that in just a second. Times are hard when you lose your job to this theft, and then you have smug, wealthy idiots like Ethan Klein, people working in an air-conditioned studio who buy everything off of Amazon, saying, "Oh, well, it's no big deal because that's a big corporation. Please don't touch our stuff." This is a terrible attitude. What if Ethan was there with his family, his wife and his kid, and they got assaulted by these criminals? He
would have ran the second he saw a black person. He wouldn't have been. He wouldn't have had the problem. He would have been like, oh, he would get afraid of the black people and he would run away. Because Ethan's just like, I think he's afraid of black people. You know, that's why he's afraid of Abba and Preach. Based or not? No. Again, I kind of get where Ethan's coming from, so.
Acted violently in this violent flash mob robbery. On top of that, he doesn't understand that when 30 people get together and they do one of these quick and dirty smash and grabs, that is an organized hit. This is organized crime that he's witnessing, but he's just pretending that these are just kind-hearted good people. And like I said, it's going to get even more ridiculous as we progress through this video.
Damn, are they dragging that guy?
And they got away, huh? There's a lot of police in the valley, then no one... Huh? Oh, there they are. A little too late there.
I'm gonna get hit with something. Oh, wait.
What is he on his cell phone? What are you doing, man? Get to work. Now's not a time for chit-chat.
No. The time to be on your cell phone is obviously when there's an active shooter in a building, a school with 19 children and 2 adults. That's the time to be on your phone, right, officer? That's the perfect time.
I just want to point out that if Ethan wasn't an idiot, if his whole cast and crew weren't complete and utter buffoons, they might have taken note of the fact that there's an ambulance present there, because as a part of this robbery, as a part of this crime, this organized retail theft, they actually sprayed something into the face of the security guard that was working there in order to disable him.
Police say in this case, someone used some sort of a spray to debilitate the security guard. Sadly, this has happened before. Back in 2021, 5 or so people robbed the Nordstrom here and used a spray as well, which caused the area to be evacuated.
It wasn't enough that they had a 30-to-1 advantage. These cowards, these thugs, these criminals also had to assault the security guard there. So you have a guy who's being injured for merchandise by these criminals who have no value for human life. On top of that, imagine if other employees try to confront these people. We've seen these stories happen before where they end up getting seriously injured or ultimately end up getting killed. And you understand the compulsion to want to stop these thieves, because eventually that's what's going to lead to you losing your job, your source of income, you actually going on hard times.
Robberies like this are a symptom of difficult times.
He's not, I mean, that's the thing is, I mean, I don't think that this is, I mean, overall, could Ethan be more intelligent about the take so far? Sure. You know, when you have this, obviously, I think that I've satisfied, even if you disagree with me, I think that you go, I get it, But I don't think what Ethan's saying is necessarily wrong. He's kind of right. I mean, it is a symptom of that.
So, I don't really get mad at robbers like this.
Yeah.
I mean... It's fucked up. It'd be more fucked up, frankly, if they were like going into homes.
Again, like they need to be arrested, 100%. I just sorry, they need to be arrested. The criminal justice system, finding them, arresting them, putting them in jail, all these things. I agree with that, but I also personally I don't care that much. But I care for the security guard. That's horrible. These things shouldn't be happening. But I mean, who are the issues here? The issues are the people doing it, and the problem with the overall like state of like the economy. I mean, I know that sounds so cringe. I know I'm sounding like, you know, fucking Jaden Smith right now, but you know, it's kind of true.
Into small businesses, still wrong. And scary.
So Ethan says, oh, it's hard times and all that. It's no big deal. It's just hard times. And this just shows me it's rough out there. And he's not mad at these people. I mean, it would be worse if they're going into small businesses. By the way, these organized retail thieves are going into and obliterating small businesses, or if they're burglarizing people's homes. Now, fortunately, burglarizing people's homes is still a crime that's prosecuted relatively seriously. So one of the things that we've noticed in the data is that in places where they don't take retail theft seriously, like in the city of New York, like in California, because they have that state law that says that you have to be a violent felon. And by the way, they classify a bunch of what used to be violent felonies as misdemeanors now to serve any prison time, is that retail theft specifically is what's on the rise. I mean, this chart that I put out from John Jay College of Criminal Justice, which specifically references New York City, shows us, and by the way, this includes the 2008 recession, which was the largest recession since the Great Depression, hard times and tough times.
It looks like a lot of the theft happened like at the start of COVID. Is that a factor? I mean, I imagine that's got to be a pretty significant factor.
That what we're seeing now, it's significantly different than what we saw before. We saw a slight uptick in thefts during the greatest recession in the history of our country, but now, post-COVID and continuing to this day, we're seeing a net 77% increase in retail theft in the city of New York. Now in California, depending on the area, there are similar increases in specifically retail theft, and this is also due to public policy, not due to this rampant desperation that's out there in the ether that's turning these kind-hearted, would-have-been-a-doctor kind of people into criminals.
There's no victim.
Right.
Really.
Unless you call Gucci. Yeah. And I guess people got...
That's the dumb thing to say, that there's no victim. There obviously is a victim there. This is where it gets stupid. If they qualified their stance saying, like, it's really wrong, I feel bad for the people that were hurt and then tried to have, like, a conversation about different systemic oppressions, they would have been like, okay. But them saying, there's no victim, that's just stupid. What you're saying is dumb.
Scared.
It's scary.
It's scary.
It'd be scary, yeah, to be in there.
So right there, they say there's no victim. Honestly and genuinely, one of the more...
There's no victim, but I'd be scared. Well, it sounds like you'd be a victim then. So there are victims.
Beliefs from the left, and all I have to say is if somebody broke into H3 Studios and stole all their expensive equipment, Ethan and other people vested in that venture would definitely feel like the victim. If somebody
That's a good point.
Broke into their Teddy Fresh, which, by the way, prices their clothes extraordinarily expensively, a la Nordstrom, and considering they don't have a storefront to operate, there's no real justification for that.
Maybe. I mean, maybe that might be true.
If they stole all of their stuff, Hila and Ethan would feel like the victims of that because they would be victimized. So stealing is in fact wrong, even if you do it from a corporation, and they need to take that seriously. On top of that,
kind of true, yeah. I mean, kind of based, yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I'll be real with you. I wouldn't care if they stole from H3 Studios. You know, I know that's mean. You know what I mean? But I'm consistent, brother. You know, you know what I mean? That's the thing. I also think it would have been good for them to qualify and like that, to be specific about the point of like, you know, I don't personally care that much. There are parts of it I do care about, but I'm a little like desensitized to it. But like overall, we as a society do need to care, right? There's people whose jobs is to care. You know what I mean? Like just like I don't care where the garbage goes after that someone picks it up. It's not my job to care, you know. But somebody does. I pay them to do it, right? With my tax dollars, I pay police officers to care about this. You know what I mean? So it's definitely wrong, you know. But I think it could be a conversation about different types of shit going on.
A security guard was injured. Now they didn't care to check into it. They just wanted to say that all these people were innocent.
I mean, you kind of saw him getting dragged on the floor, no?
And it's okay to do theft because this is what is known as a luxury belief, a belief that shows status among elite left-wingers that actually cost them nothing to say, but the people actually affected by this feel the impacts of these beliefs. They can't afford to have this in such a I'm on a podcast kind of way, because if you work at this store and you end up getting fired when it's closed, and that store is an anchor to the mall, and that has impact on all the other stores that are in that mall, then you can't adopt the idea that this is no big deal, nothing to worry about. But Ethan could do that because he's sitting in a studio, air-conditioned in California, not having to deal with the consequences of this, because his business is online in the digital economy and it's hard for people to steal his content.
Pretty crazy, man.
Oh, don't worry. I steal Ethan's content all the time. All the time, baby.
I mean, I got to assume you got to be in a pretty bad situation to be down for this, because
again, Ethan is watching a segment. Maybe it's
I mean, that probably is true. I mean, I would assume that there must be something going on in your life for you to be robbing stores. Like, I mean, at the risk of going to jail. You know what I mean? But you don't have to be empathetic to them. I get it, but like I mean, that's how I feel too. It's a little crazy.
It's because they're playing it silently in the background where you see an ambulance. What do you think that ambulance is for? That's for
maybe it's a wambulance for you crying like a bitch. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
The injured security guard who was injured trying to fight off this smash and grab robbery. Somebody who was sprayed in the face by these criminals who were ready to commit violence. Damn. A lot of these incidents, when people confront them, end up in serious injury and or murders. But Ethan is totally fine with that because it's just Nordstrom. I mean, that person wanted to make an honest living working as a security guard.
True.
All these other people working retail that are defending their jobs by defending the store that they work at wanted to make an honest living. So obviously, we're going to say that their rights are subordinate to the organized retail thieves who are opportunistic scumbags, repeat offenders that are participating in organized crime. But again, we haven't even got to the absolute best portion of this.
If you have a good job, you're not doing this.
No.
Probably.
You're just not doing it.
He's probably right, yeah.
Anyway. You know what I mean?
I mean, I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, he's not wrong. If you have a decent job, you're probably not going to steal. At least not to the same degree. Unless you're a politician or a banker. Or on Wall Street. You know what I mean? Those people there. But yeah, I mean, I generally agree with the sentiment.
Ethan, you're so unbelievably ignorant and
why is it ignorant?
It's kind of amazing. The reason why a person with a good job isn't participating in this organized retail theft
is because they have money and they have something to lose.
Is not because, but for the good job, they would be a criminal or in a criminal gang. The reason why is because the foresight, the impulse control, all of the things that led that person to build themselves up to the point where they can get a good job is what is preventing them from stealing from these places.
I understand what he's saying. What actual justice warrior is saying is like that outstanding citizen got the good job because they're an outstanding citizen. And Ethan's perspective is the job not existing doesn't create the outstanding citizen. I mean, I generally agree with like both of those in different ways. But again, if you live in the community that's poor with shit job opportunities, and part of it's social media too, going like, look at how popular this person. When you show off a bunch of gaudy bullshit, I think it triggers something in people's brain. We all look at social media, whether we look at somebody with more money, more attractive, bigger penises. Not that. Well, that one I don't personally identify with that one. But you look and you go like, oh, you know, I wish that were me in some capacity. I wish I was the attractive person. I wish I had the money. I wish I had the money for the rollie. You know? And I think that mixed in with the fact that there are people who are poor and their communities don't have jobs. And part of the reason is welfare. The way our welfare program operates, like, what does it do? If you live in a financially robust area, welfare is not bad. You get on it for a little bit, or, you know, like unemployment, basically. And then you get off of it because there's jobs available. If you live in an area where there's not jobs that are not available, all of a sudden what happens? You go, I can either work, make this much money on welfare, or make a little bit more maybe if I work 40 hours a week, maybe even less. And then if I lose my job, it'll be hard to get back onto welfare. So you know what? I'm just going to say fuck it. And then that breeds like a culture of people who just don't give a shit. And there's so many different systemic factors, right? And that creates like less jobs, less employability. People go to school less. There's less money for those schools. Then you have like higher crime areas like in New York. And then who's working there? People from Long Island. So they're going to New York. They're taking that tax money. They're spending all the money in their hometown, which just makes their area more robust. They're spending it in their malls. They're spending it in their grocery stores. They're spending it on their mechanics. They're spending it on their food places. They're taking that money an hour or so away. That's more money going through that area and making that area more enriched. And then all of a sudden it's like this siphoning of wealth coming in and out of these poor areas. And there's just, and then it's like it's like fat bastard at this point where you eat because you're unhappy because you eat. You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, you steal because there's no jobs because you steal, and then all of a sudden you have this complete like bubble burst, right? It's a complicated thing. I generally agree with both of them. I agree more with Ethan. You know, it's always going to be complicated. I'm kind of a UBI guy. I respect it, at least a negative income tax, because we need to solve the problem of giving people more money, not increasing the minimum wage to a degree that'll hurt small businesses, and getting people off of the dependency of welfare programs that are very conditional welfare programs. Unconditional money in a UBI, and of course there's flaws, and we can talk about that, but that unconditionality of the money means that you can go to work and you still get the money. So people are like, well, either I could just get the money or I can work and get the money. Fuck it. And then there's more money going around the system, which means more jobs, more small businesses, more happiness, more malls, more money to go to destinations. It can mean that like you could have one of the people, whether it's mom or dad, not having to work necessarily, because if you get $2,000 a month extra because you're a married family, all of a sudden maybe one person doesn't need to work. So you have a caretaker, or you can afford caretaking. You have more money to have more kids. You know, there's a lot of different things. I feel like UBI could be like, it's just money. It's just very, very fundamental, right? So yeah, that's how I feel.
These people are going for quick, instant gratification, the thuggish, brutish tactic. They could not get a good job because they don't have the foresight, the ingenuity, and the ambition in order to do so. I talked about this.
But then, like, my question is, like, why do you think that? I don't think that you think that because they're black, unless you're racist. You're probably not racist. I don't think that. So it must be a culture thing. Where did that culture come from? Culture generally identifies with, especially black people, that have been denied opportunities for however many years, that weren't even considered people until 1965. Right? So it's like, okay, we don't think it. Like, so, like, how do we defeat that culture? Well, more money for education in schools, more money in those communities in general. There's a lot of different things that we could target, but it's not like fundamentally the people's fault. Anybody that grows up there would have the same problem. And conservatives have to agree with that because we always talk about systemic oppression. They're like, well, it's not just black people. You're right. It could be anybody. I would argue that a white person growing up in an area like that is going to have a similarly negative experience than a black person in that area. Right? But it's not because there's nothing inherent about it. So,
conversation with Sam Cedar about how in the city of New York, the population that is the most in public housing is actually the Hasidic Jews, the ones with the hats and the Russian coats, and yet they have almost no crime in their community. This is because they have strong community bonds, and oftentimes
part of it's strong community bonds, part of it is because listen, I have a friend who used to work in New York City for a government institution that helped people in like the Hasidic Jew community escape. They in order to get their vote, they typically speaking, like, the people in New York will give them huge leeway on having to do education or really applying the laws equally to some of these individuals. And it's to the point where some people are getting abused in those cases. It's not nothing to do with Judaism. Traditional religious communities can be very abusive. And that's why they have government instituted things to help them escape. So I don't think it's comparable one-on-one, considering that. But yeah, sure, they have you'd argue, a better culture. Sure. We also haven't treated Jewish people like we've treated black people. So a lot of moving parts.
Even though they start out in poverty, they're working towards something. The same is true for Asian Americans. A lot of them come to this country poorer than the general population.
Sure.
But guess what? They have a mindset to succeed. They are working towards a good job.
Sure.
Their parents might be working some crappy, very difficult position, like a lot of the Asian people that I know, but they're doing that because they value the education and the success of their children, and there's expectations that they will do the right thing. That is what makes them successful. That's what leads them to the good job, and it also leads them to not go down the criminal path. People who don't have that within them, who don't have a good community structure that looks down on this, people who embrace Ethan's ideology that is just Nordstrom.
I think Actual Justice Warrior is making the argument that part of how we change the culture is for social media folks to stop excusing bad behavior, stop demonizing companies and cops. That's an easy ask. No, it's not an easy ask. I understand what you're saying. It's not. It's more complicated than that. Like, yes, we shouldn't completely excuse what's happening, of course, but I mean, I think it'd be more beneficial to focus more on the fact that Amazon doesn't pay federal income tax, right? We have big corporations who have massive tax breaks, massive tax cuts. My understanding is that they pay income tax that is proportionally less than us. They have lower effective tax rates than the average middle class American. It's fucking tough out there. And we know this. We know just in the medical industry alone. Look up Mark Cuban. This is a great I think it's a great example. Mark Cuban has a website where he sells medications directly to people. To get a 3-month supply of every one of my medications on there would cost me less than a 1-month supply through my insurance. I could get cheaper medication through him uninsured than I could get insured through my insurance, which I'm probably going to switch. Not everybody knows about this, right? And what happens is because they upcharge to such a predatory, I mean that degree, that they are killing people. And that's just healthcare, right? This is something that's happening. And every single time a manufacturer tries to open up with more affordable prices, what happens? The big pharmaceutical companies, they buy that little person out and they don't let them make their drug, right? We know this to be a fact. We know that like our FDA is ineffective compared to the FDA, like the similar things in other countries. The food that we eat is so shitty and addictive. It's just like the food is generally healthier in other countries, other like Western countries. We know that there are like these huge problems of these businesses not paying people very well, even though they have the money, collecting millions and billions of dollars in extra revenue as their minimum wage workers do worse and worse off and have to be reliant on to like sometimes welfare as well as the job. We see it every single day. We see it in our healthcare, which is huge. We see it all over the place. And so, like, absolutely, we should focus on as individual. It's not conspiracy brain. You're objectively wrong. Like, at this point, you're just wrong. I'm telling you a fact. Like, you're saying conspiracy brain because you're not here to listen. We should, as a culture, not accept bad behavior. But then why don't you call out the bad behavior of the banks causing the Great Recession in 2008? Right? So that's where it kind of comes to. That's what it kind of comes down to. So yeah, businesses don't generally pay what a job is worth. No, they don't. They will pay as little as they have to pay in order to get people. I know. I think at this point you're just being stupid and trolling. So that's like the focus. Is there's a lot of complicated problems. There's not a lot of solutions. Our politicians are financially beheld to different lobbying groups, where they care more about businesses and corporations than us, whether they're Republican or Democrat. So we don't have, like, that's what it comes down to. You know, we could sit here, and actually Justice Warrior is very smart. He's certainly smarter than Ethan. He's smarter than me. But at the end of the day, people can sense the shift in the wind, and people are getting more and more angry and more riled up. And they're not, like, you're going to see more people that have been dealt with oppression, whether they're white, black, Hispanic, anything, committing more crimes. That's what's going to happen. And we could sit here and say, nope, the system is working as intended as much as we want. And you can out-debate somebody on that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because we're still going to see the negative impacts. The lower class is only going to put up with so much before they start, like, fucking revolting. And then you're going to see a bunch of... That's why you see a bunch of dumb, idiot college children going, we should do communism. Right? So, you think I'm in your feeling? No, I think that you're probably... Okay. I think you're probably trolling. So, yeah, man, like, it's hard. It's hard out there. It's hard out there. And to be clear, you know, I'm a 33-year-old man. I worked an actual regular job, unlike some people in the chat, for 10 years, where I had a union that allowed the company to steal my benefits and add more work to my load, despite the fact that they were supposed to be there to protect me, where I paid $100 a week just for my own insurance, where it was still expensive to go to a doctor or a hospital or to get medication. I'm not some fucking asshole who's either a kid that's never experienced it or otherwise. I've talked to the people there, people who worked 2 jobs, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, who would complain about the same shit every fucking day that I would complain about as I worked, you know, some like 50, 60 hours a week. You know what I mean? And so, like, think about it, you know, right now it's like, it feels like you have to work 60 hours a week of like a regular jobs just to fucking survive. So when I see somebody stealing, I go, that's not right. And then I also go, but I don't really care. Because I'm getting fucked, right? And I'm in a much better spot now. But like, that's how people feel, man. And it's tone deaf for you to not understand that. It's just tone deaf for you to not get that, and it means you're probably like a little stinky baby.
It's just $100,000 worth of merchandise. It's just theft and all that. Those people weren't going to be successful in the first place. We need to create strong deterrents in order to direct them in the right path. Because
yeah, like better schools.
Obviously, the normal societal guardrails do not apply to these people who are acting in such a deviant way.
If you have a good job, you're not doing this.
No,
you're just not doing it. That's my theory, anyway. You know what I mean? Guys, and if you disagree, remember Aladdin, okay? Aladdin and his monkey.
And the bread.
They were stealing bread. Were they bad people?
No, they were not.
If you ask the street merchants, they were ready to chop his head off.
Right. But he had a heart of gold.
Yes, in living color.
I mean, it's funny. It's a bit of a joke. So, but they're not necessarily wrong.
In
so.
HD, Ethan of H3H3 Productions just went with, unironically, the all criminals are Aladdin line of argumentation. The exact joke that I made about the left to mock their beliefs, their embrace of the criminal, their excusing crime with the excuse of poverty, Ethan just put it forward as a legitimate argument. Now, quick correction, Ethan, you dumbass who hasn't seen Aladdin in a long time.
Why is he so angry? That's my thing.
The merchants were trying to cut off Aladdin's hand because that was a punishment back in the day for stealing, not cut off his head. You should really pay attention to the movie before you reference it. But yeah.
Why is he so mad at Ethan?
He's actually going with, they're stealing $100,000 worth of merchandise, attacking a security guard because they're trying to feed their starving children.
And a lot of love.
Street rat riffraff.
I don't think that's, well, okay. I don't think that's what they're making. Okay. Yeah, I guess you would see that's where they would come from, because he was stealing food, Aladdin was stealing an apple to feed a starving child. So the direct comparison, like, he's right. He's right. That is what Ethan's comparing it to. So that's a good point, but I think that, like, I think people interpret it more abstractly as, like, people are just stealing because they don't have money, right? That's how at least I interpret it. Different people interpret different things different ways, but that makes sense for him to have that perspective.
I don't buy that.
Street rat.
You have work off today?
Riff-raff. I don't.
Beautiful
buy
top, brother.
That's a great movie, man.
Yes,
That's one of the great ones.
One of the
It's all right.
greats.
These people are beyond parody. Occasionally when I'm making videos, I put forward a dumb, ridiculous, absurd argument to the contrary, and when I'm editing, I think to myself, would anybody on the left wing with a huge platform actually put this argument forward? And each and every single time I leave that in, I put that in the video and I go forward with it, they prove me right. That becomes their exact argument. That becomes their exact position that they're going to go for. And never did I imagine that Ethan would actually go for the all criminals are Aladdin argument. Never did I imagine that the joke, the thing I used to mock these—
I think it's a little bit of a joke, and I always say jokes aren't just like, oh, I don't mean it. Jokes, you push ideas through jokes, but I don't think that he means they are. Maybe, I don't know. I think it's a part of it is a little bit of an exaggerated joke. I don't think it's that deep. I think he was just making a little joke about Aladdin.
These people, for the idiots that they are.
It's like all the times in debate, you will use a hyperbole as a comparison, right? Like, I know Actual Justice Warrior is very good at debating, and that's not like a criticism. So, like, you'll use a hyperbolic scenario or comparison all the time, right? And so, like, you could argue that it's almost like a debate thing, and it's like, well, you know, people stealing because they feel oppressed in some capacity is similar to it happening in Aladdin, where people felt oppressed and they stole for food. But obviously, in Nordstrom is clothing. You don't need to steal fucking clothing. But I mean, I think that's where it goes with that.
Would not be sufficient because they are actually beyond how stupid I could have imagined them to be.
Oakland, state of mind. What's happening here?
These are like the smash and grabs that are going on near San Francisco. It's wild.
So I feel like that's much worse because that's somebody's personal car. I mean, there does seem to be an overall issue in San Francisco. What the fuck's going on?
Just doing it right in front of the person.
Oh, that's their car?
Yeah, I believe
Dude
so.
just pulled over. His license plate. He's got his plates out and everything.
Yep.
Wow.
His gas cap is open. Somebody should let him know.
Sir, excuse me.
Sir, excuse me, your gas cap.
Maybe they stole it from a gas station while someone's filling up.
No.
He's like, need help with your
Just a
bag?
little forgetful.
Yeah. There's actually another video on this page of someone doing that.
Dude doesn't even know what's in the damn suitcase.
Now, there's a reason I left this clip in here in particular. The Aladdin clip, obviously. That's what I'm going to clickbait about. That's what I'm going to make fun of Ethan about. That's what I'm going to do something related to this title about. But the sympathy for the thieves over the innocent person goes beyond that. This is a guy, suitcase in his bag, likely a tourist visiting Oakland. Maybe he's there on a business conference. He's being robbed in broad daylight. They smash the back of his window, possibly a rental car. They take his entire suitcase out through force, through intimidation, and Ethan's laughing about it. He's having a good time.
Why?
I don't know. That's what's in suitcases.
Why do you think that?
Yeah, I mean, this one is pretty big. This one is pretty bad. They'd be like, well, this is just unacceptable behavior. I mean, there's no way to justify this one at all. You know, you're just stealing somebody's personal property. Again, I think that these issues would go down with some systemic change. But I mean, like, yeah, no, I feel bad for the guy getting robbed. Like, that's fucked up. There's no, it's a terrible thing.
These are the same people who adopt these luxury beliefs that will wonder why these places don't have grocery stores, why these places have low hotel occupancy, why these places have pharmacies closing, and all these other issues based on the theft, but they'll never put two and two together that this is the reason for it, that this is what is going on in the cities that they support. Ethan even mocked the idea of leaving California over this, but the thing is, in California, you don't just have people on talk shows.
My understanding is that, like, I forget, I saw like a Gavin or whatever, he was talking about it. My understanding is that more people, maybe it's per capita, go to actually go to California from Florida than the reverse. But I could be misquoting that, so.
Like Ethan Klein, stating these positions, taking these luxury beliefs and making them their own. You have people with money doing this, people who donate to political campaigns, people who advocate to keep the same policies in place that drive these people into poverty. You want to be in a neighborhood where this happens? Likely not. Guess what? Real estate prices are going to go down.
He's not necessarily wrong that, like, the policies from, like, Democrats don't necessarily solve the problem. Like, sure. I mean, okay, yeah. Sure. Okay.
You want to open a business?
I wonder what his perspective would be to like reduce the issue with crime in like an area. Like I said, I think like a UBI would be. I think a UBI would be a great way to redistribute wealth. You know, it would take a while, but.
Area? Likely not. And if you do, guess what? Your insurance premiums are going to go up. You're going to face all sorts of extra costs that are going to disincentivize you from wanting to work here. And contrary to Ethan's myth-making, this does happen to small businesses. And by the way, the people who are most robbed happen to be poor people in these areas that are doing the right thing. If you make under $10,000 in the United States of America, you are among the poorest households in this nation, then you're actually 206% more likely to face a violent criminal victimization than if you were to make over $75,000.
Yeah, that makes sense because like because poor people are more likely to cause crime. So if those poor people are causing crime, they're causing crime onto people in their own area, and it's like a perpetuation of the issue. It's the same thing where like when people sell drugs for money, who are they selling drugs to? Their own communities that don't have a lot of money and already have like issues in there, and they're basically destroying their own communities. Like, yeah, for sure.
Studies from not only the United States of America, but from the United Kingdom have shown repeatedly that the concern or the fear of being victimized by violent criminals goes up dramatically as somebody's income goes down. So what we're watching right here is a visual representation of that data. Ethan Klein is a multi-millionaire, so he's laughing off the victimization of other people. Meanwhile, those people in that salary range are exponentially more fearful of being victimized, and it is true that they are significantly more likely to be victimized by the very criminals that Ethan Klein is labeling Aladdin. On top of that, when you talk about thieves, burglars, robbers, muggers, and all that, this idea that they're robbing wealthy houses in affluent neighborhoods is a total misnomer. Sure, the chances of you getting a higher value stuff from those places might be higher, but the criminals don't typically know those neighborhoods, so the risk of getting caught outweighs the potential for increased benefits. They also have better security systems and all that, and if you don't have a security system, you're 300% more likely to be victimized by a burglary than if you did have a security system. Oftentimes what we
wish I get victimized by a burger right now, bro. I'm fucking hungry. Yeah, he's not wrong. Sure. Again, I think this almost helps prove the point though, because it's like, oh, there's more crime in poor areas. Like, I wonder if it's because they're poor. You know what I mean? Because people will steal from their own area, except for the rich bankers. So they just steal from all of us through like, you know, like our pensions and stuff. But that's not that big of a deal. Right, that's really not that big of a deal. I don't think it's kind of just par for the course. We're just used to it.
Find out is that criminals rob, burglarize places in their own neighborhoods or equivalent neighborhoods, or sometimes, and this is very likely, much more likely than affluent areas, neighborhoods that are worse off. So Ethan Klein's position, where he's trying to be sympathetic and he says they're Aladdins and he's all for the poor, could not be more cruel to the poor if.
But I don't know, because like Aladdin was stealing from merchants. Like, were those merchants? How do we know they're not poor? You know what I mean? Just because they're merchants doesn't mean that they weren't poor. You know, and so like if anything, maybe Aladdin was like that. Aladdin ultimately, you know, he's the good, like he's a good guy, but so is the merchant. You know, he's just enforcing his very, I would say, draconian law, but that's not his fault. I mean, there's no robust anything. I mean, there's the rich people. I mean, that bitch had to fucking tame a tiger. She's part of the problem. She had a tamed fucking tiger. She had a whole tiger that she tamed, and she tamed the tiger. I mean, maybe she's a bad guy too. I mean, her dad was wearing a fancy hat. They were keeping those people oppressed and into situations where they would have to feel like they had to steal because they didn't have money for fucking kids. And then she's like, oh, look at me. I'm such a good person. How much do you think it costs to upkeep a tiger food-wise? Think about that. How much do you think it costs to raise to feed a tiger? How many little kids do you think they could have fed with the tiger meat? First of all. Second of all, by not feeding the tiger, you'd have more resources to feed the people. You know what I mean? I'm just saying. I'm onto something. Because I said so.
If he was trying to intentionally. So as you go down on the income spectrum, you are more likely to be attacked. And these people will pretend that they're supporting those in poverty when they're actually supporting the perpetrators who victimize those in poverty and keep areas in poverty.
And like I generally I agree with that, what he's saying, but like in this case though, he did like, oh, who cares about Nordstrom? They have money too. So like they're not making a vague statement about it. They're making a very specific, I don't care, it's Nordstrom. But then again, then they're also just kind of mocking, you know, like the situation with that guy getting robbed, which is shitty.
Poverty due to their unchecked criminality.
Good thing I barely leave my house, so yeah. Chances are low. Golly, gee willikers, man. It's a troubled world out here.
True.
But at the end of the day, there's not enough space in prisons, right? Like, what the F? Should we really be putting these people in prison? I don't know. The world is not it's all messed up.
That's just a weird comment. I could see why actual justice warriors like, what's going on with this silly goose? Like, we might have again, like that's a systemic issue. You know, we have to put these people in prison to get them off the streets. But it helped to reform them, of course, as well. I think that's also a factor. But then at the same time, you know, we need to fix the prison system. But you know, so you put people in prison and then you try to figure out, you know, like prison, unfortunately, in my opinion, should exist to help reform people and to get people off the streets and not cause any additional harm. I don't think that it does I don't think that it helps people with opportunities that well. Again, a lot of systemic issues to address. I also don't think we should put people with mental health problems in prisons necessarily, or they should be in special prisons for people that know how to deal with them. Because I feel bad for correctional officers who have to deal with people with mental health issues because they can be very difficult and they're not necessarily trained for that.
I got to assume that the DA in San Francisco did it because, like, the cost and the space is just not there.
So Ethan Klein again continues his unchecked streak of being completely uninformed about what he's talking about. So under California law, by a court decision actually, not by a law, but although there are laws in order to put this decision into effect, California has to reduce their prison population due to the fact that they have high prison density. And if you're convicted of what they categorize as a non-violent crime, you can only be sent to the county jail. So what happens is repeat offenders, like the case of the guy who committed 77 burglaries, end up being released after just months because the county jail doesn't have enough space to compensate for these offenders. The solution would be to build more prisons, have more space so that you can constitutionally hold these people down.
Sure. And I imagine that there's like a financial block on it to some degree. That's probably why they're not doing it. I mean, that's another issue too. I mean, we only have so much money, right? So
who are committing crimes, who are the repeat offenders. And this is not only good because it gets these people off the streets, but it's also good because if you actually spread prisoners out, you don't have such dense prison populations, violence goes down from within the prison. So even if you wanted to keep prison population exactly the same for some arbitrary reason, it still makes practical sense to spread the prisoners out, build more prisons in order to compensate.
I mean, that's interesting. I just like, where would we get the money for that? And I know you could ask the same question for like a UBI, but like, is that you know, just make new prisons. That's, I mean, how much? I think that would be part of it too. You know, it's but I mean, it's an interesting idea.
For this,
if I'm speaking out of turn here,
yeah, release people in jail they're in jail for weed. I wonder how many people are in there for that.
Then I apologize.
It's a nice car.
What's with the damn the suitcase?
I was terrified all weekend. Every DM I got was do not leave anything in the car.
Well, San Francisco's a big city.
So again, look, they're showing videos of individual people being victimized. Tourists in the state of California being targeted, likely due to their rental car plates. They just pop open the trunk, they end up stealing something, and it's their suitcases, by the way. This might have their passports if they're international tourists or other things that are important to people, and they're just laughing it off. They're like, oh, it's no big deal.
In the car.
Well, San Francisco's a big city.
I mean, it's,
Do not
you're from Detroit, dude, and you live in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
You're not.
Listen, my brother-in-law, who's from Detroit, who lives in San Fran now, was like, yo, he literally came outside. He's like, I'm here to help you guys. I don't want you to leave anything in the car. And he's like in a super nice area. Like there's like CEOs that live around him. I don't know what the hell's going on.
So first things first, Detroit is obviously more dangerous than San Francisco by the numbers in terms of violent crime, in terms of homicide, and in terms of robbery. However, car break-ins are higher in the city of San Francisco, and since they're not prosecuted, the same people are breaking into cars over and over and over again.
Interesting.
You're from Detroit, dude, and you live in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
You're not.
Listen, my brother-in-law.
I mean, yeah, I get it. It makes fundamental sense that if you don't punish a particular action, that's actually going to happen more. That's why I said, like, you should punish the action of what they're doing. By like breaking into Nordstrom and shit. I just personally don't care that much. Like, I know that sounds shitty, but that's been my whole take from the start. I'm not that empathetic to it because of these different things. But I believe that you have to take care of it both ways. You have to punish them, but then also address like more systemic issues. Like, obviously. And that's been my take from the start. So
who's from Detroit.
Also, and I need to give this caveat because it's incredibly important.
Yeah.
A lot of people who say they used to live in Detroit lived in the nice area of Detroit or a suburb in the Detroit metro area. They're not actually in the city proper. So a lot of people will say that, oh, it's nicer over there in the neighborhoods I was, but they never went to the horrible neighborhoods that have the leading in the nation murders in the United States of America in terms of Detroit. They only went in maybe to go see something like the automotive factory. Maybe they worked there and then they left back to the burbs. And
Probably true. Yeah.
They didn't actually experience it, but they say they live in the Detroit area because it's the Detroit metro area. That's what I think possibly is going on with this
Probably
guy right here. So his perspective might be skewed in terms of overall violent crime. That being said, car thefts in San Francisco are off the charts, and this is due to the fact that it's not prosecuted. And look at who's being robbed, and look at the same reaction from Ethan and his crew. They're laughing about it. They're enjoying it. If you're one of these sad people who decided to visit one of America's once great cities, and you lost your important worldly possessions to these thugs and criminals, they're going to take the side of the thugs and criminals. That's who they are, because again, they don't have to experience it. It is a luxury belief that they're utilizing in order to denote status, in order to make themselves look better to their friends without actually ever addressing the problem.
That is crazy, though. Goddamn. I mean, it sucks. I don't have a solution. Hey, I'm not running for governor. Don't vote for me.
Well, at least that's honest.
It's not my problem. Talk to Gavin Newsom about it.
How about you advocate for a solution, Ethan? How about you point out that this is unacceptable behavior? How about you tell...
I mean, the only one thing... Well, okay. The criticism of how about you like have a solution is valid because he has a podcast with Hassan. Like, if he was not somebody who threw his hat into the political conversation arena ever, then what Ethan's saying doesn't really matter. But Ethan does talk about systemic issues. So that expectation, I think, is reasonable to be like, where's your response? Like, what, you know, you should be talking about this in a more educated way. Obviously, no black people or no poor people or no anybody watches Ethan. Sorry, it's just, I mean, that was, the black part was irrelevant. I was just trying to make a racist joke about how Ethan, nobody, you know, he doesn't like black people as a little joke, but it missed. But obviously, no poor people that are in systemic issues would ever are watching Ethan. So nothing he says matters. But he should still have a solution, because then all the white people that watch him, can enact better change. All the privileged people will say. All the privileged people that watch him can enact better change. How's that?
Your idiotic left-wing audience, which, by the way, you share with Jenk's nephew, who also cheers on the criminality that he himself doesn't have to deal with.
Hey, it was only a $3 bag of Doritos.
With on a daily basis, that this is wrong, this is immoral.
Which, by the way, is expensive for a bag of fucking Doritos.
Advocate for change in the law. You do that for things that you care about, but when it comes to victims of crime, all of a sudden, you're nowhere to be found. All of a sudden, you're on a vacation. All of a sudden, you're too busy praising the people, the predators, who end up victimizing them, pretending that nobody got assaulted in these violent attacks that you're showing on your stream.
Yeah, I think that Ethan should just have a better... When you talk about, like, political shit, you have to be, like, you have to qualify every little thing that you say. And, like, Ethan just didn't do that. I don't know, you know, I think it was a little lazy.
Because that's who you are to your core.
I mean, you could...
Somebody would rather look good than do good, and that...
I mean, you could argue that, like... I don't know, man. I mean, you could really argue that he doesn't seem super educated on the topic, Ethan, and that part of it's a virtue signal, because there's a lot of people that want to feel good about themselves by saying, like, I'm woke, I understand that, you know, bad situations breed crime, but they don't care about it, and they don't vote in a way to change it, so... Either way, interesting video. You know, we agreed, we disagreed. And I got to take a piss.